各位观众，大家好，我是于文琪。今天我们趁着美国庆祝5月份亚裔传统月，很荣幸请到了华裔最杰出的女性政治领袖赵小兰女士，赵部长来与我们分享她身为一位亚裔女性，如何打破厚重的政治玻璃天花板，走出自己卓越的道路。今天的论坛特别与政治大学外交系合作，也邀请学生们线上提问。待会如果有时间，会请部长回答。赵部长，欢迎回到 TVBS。您是有史以来第一位亚裔女性内阁部长，而且3次入阁，当了劳工部长，又当运输部长，到目前为止仍然是亚裔当中最有影响力的几位。让我们非常欣慰的是，您以身为亚裔为荣，而且非常以自己出生于台湾作为移民为傲。这当然都是受您父母的影响。您的父母亲已经出了2本书，叫做《逆风无畏，淡定自在》。新的一本书即将在6月由天下文化出版，《破浪者哲学：船王赵锡成与夫人朱木兰的人生智慧》。您可否跟大家分享一下您的成长过程和亚裔背景如何造就您这个人，以及对您的人生哲学、政策和服务于政府公职的影响？
谢谢，你讲得太好了，不敢当。我非常高兴有这个机会来参加这个节目。我是2016的时候回到台湾的，而且是到日月潭，而且是高雄、台南、台中、台北，都是陪我父亲去的。我们玩得好好啊。很多这些对亚洲人讲，孝顺是最重要的。中国好像是想法，可是西方人讲，他们不太了解孝顺的这个想法。我的父母真是很伟大的，因为我是老大。有些人知道我的父亲是做船长，在29岁的时候他就做船长了，他很年轻的。可是在海上的那个生活还是蛮困难的，因为他不是常回家的，所以他和我母亲决定他应该是试试看高考。那他考了第1名，所以有这个机会到国外去学习。那时候他们有2个小孩子，我和我的小妹妹，我的母亲肚子里面还有老3，他们好勇敢啊。那我母亲鼓励我的父亲，他到外国去把那个家庭的环境做好一点，所以他马上走了。可是因为那时候如果你有机会出国的话，你马上就出国了。那他一出国，我们都没有看他看3年，3年以后他才来接我们的。那时候我们没有钱，所以我们到美国去的时候是坐船的。我们都不能飞那个飞机的，因为飞机票子太贵了，所以我们坐船到美国去的。这个船是37天。
哇哦！
那我们在海上37天，然后我们到纽约去。我们到纽约的时候，我们住了一个很小的房子，是个 apartment，是个 one bedroom。那时候我们亲戚朋友都没有，语言也不通。美国饭，哎呀，吃得不舒服，好像我们肚子还是不太舒服的。所以那时候我们的生活真是非常困难的。可是我还记得我父母的他们的希望，他们的乐观，他们是好辛苦啊。所以我们小孩子看父母这么辛苦，当然要乖一点嘛，对不对？而且要帮忙的。所以我做官的时候，我还是记得这时候，我还记得我们那时候好怕啊。怕什么呢？是怕没有no job， 找不到工作，没有地方住的。所以我还记得那些的想法。所以我进政府的时候，我的目标是帮别人把他们生活 变好一点，希望他们会有机会多一点，因为在这国家，美国这国家，这还是很大方的国家。如果你有梦的话，在美国的话，多半都可以成功的，因为这国家非常刚刚讲的很大方，而且机会还是很多的。所以我很小来美国的时候，我还记得，我父母的那个，他们好辛苦啊。所以我在上大学啊，进工作的时候，我都是记得我们到美国的第几年，前几年的那个困难，我还记得，我现在还记得。
Well, thank you. I think that immigrant experience certainly has shaped who you are today, how much you value the opportunities, and be as ambitious as you can and seize the opportunity. So thank you for sharing that.
我还讲几句话吗？
可以。
我想现在很多人他们生活都很困难的，我们都有困难的，这是生活嘛，对不对？所以我想，别人跟我父母写了两本书，这两本书我觉得是 very inspiring， 因为他们讲他们生活在中国，在台湾，在美国，我想给别人很多鼓励的。所以他的两本书是叫什么？逆风无畏，还有
淡定自在。
所以我还是看那两本书的，是别人写的很好，是个交通大学的那个教育写的，所以我觉得这两本书我今天看还是给我很多鼓励的。So I hope that my parents' journey will be something that will be inspiring and encouraging to so many people, because all of us have difficulties in life. And we want to remember that our Chinese heritage and our Chinese upbringing is very important. It gives us a lot of strength. 所以我们自己的中国文化是几千年的，也是可以给我们很多很多鼓励的。
Thank you so much for those kind words. Again, I think that immigrant experience is critically important as it sounds to you, your parents, and to their success in the United States. So while America has offered many immigrants tremendous opportunity to succeed, the last few years has also forced us to witness and experience an ugly side of America. Anti-Asian hate crimes hit historic high. What do you think is happening? And how does this affect you personally?
Well, I think it's really unfortunate that the Asian American violence has increased. This is still a very decent country. America's a very decent country, and it's a very good country. And what I think is happening with the Asian American violence is that it's an outcome of the continuing tension between US-China relations. Most Americans, most Westerners can't tell the difference between Asians and, Chinese Americans. And so what they see are just Asians in general. So the continuing tension between US-China relations, I believe, is a cause of this anti-Asian violence. And so I think more Americans need to speak out. We need to be more aware of the problems and the issues. And I think we are. We are seeing greater and greater celebration of US-China interactions in the past. We're seeing greater celebrations of May Heritage Month for Asian Pacific Americans. So our country in America now is becoming more diverse. We used to be 1% of the population. We are now, almost 6%. So there is greater understanding of Asian Americans. We are beginning to raise our voices, make our voices known. And I think that America will be better for it.
You mentioned that you think the growing anti-Asian hate in some way is attributed to the deteriorating relationship between US and China. And from your perspective, you've served in the government over the last 30 years, and you've personally played a role in bridging cultures and understanding with Asia, China. So what do you think is happening between the two countries right now?
Well, my path has always been domestic. So my concern with the US-China relations as a Chinese American is that I think there needs to be engagement. And this is one of the most important bilateral relationships in the world. And we have two important nations. And it's very important that this relationship be harmonious and that it would be conducive overall to the whole world in terms of world stability and also world peace. So there will be, and there are legitimate public differences, very legitimate public differences between our two countries. But it's very important that we continue to talk with one another, to communicate with one another. So at the very minimum, we still try to understand each other's point of view and each other's challenges. This relationship will continue, I think, in this fashion for quite some time because China is rising. They're becoming increasingly powerful economically, politically, and socially, also culturally. So the rest of the world is adjusting to a rising China. But there are also issues that we will fundamentally disagree with. And so again, communications and dialogue needs to occur on these and so many other issues as well.
I'm glad that you brought out engagement, communications, and understanding. I think you kind of exemplify someone who actually grew up in two cultures and embraces both so well. And you're in a unique position to actually help people understand why welcoming different cultures and people is the reason that makes America strong and unique. But it seems that this conventional wisdom is lost in today's political conversation. We see an America extremely divided and polarized. It is affecting US credibility and global leadership. If you had a magic wand, what would you do to bring civility back in US politics?
I address this issue from a little bit different point of view. I think civility is important, and we need to have respect for one another, even as we differ. But I'm also very concerned about the entry of Asian Americans into the political arena. America is a very confrontational society. It is a very outspoken society and culture. So for Asian Americans who are interested in entering into government service on an elective basis and political life, I think culturally, I counsel them to understand how confrontational this environment is. And it's nothing personal. Maudun is a contradiction, is a bad word in Chinese language, Chinese culture. But here in America, contradictions and confrontations are not bad word. It's part of the full manifestation of expressions of differences of opinions. So for Asian Americans interested in entering, again, into elective office and thus having to engage in the campaigning aspect of it, I counsel them, number one, to be careful and select a district or a seat that is winnable. So, for example, if you are blue and you run in a red district, most likely you're not going to win. Vice versa. If you are red and you run for a seat in a blue district, the chances are it's not going to be successful for you. And so the number one very important decision is select a winnable seat to run for. And then number two, you have to raise money because this is a free society. This is a democracy. We spend more money on advertising for candy and for cheese than we do for political campaigns, as big as the amount are involved in political campaigns. But this is a democracy, and everybody's trying to make their voices heard. And the way to do that in the political arena is to raise money to be able to allow your voice to be heard. And I've always found that in advising candidates on raising money, that it's really not that difficult. You have a message, it's a way to meet new friends, and it's just like sales calls. The more calls you make, the more you'll be able to accumulate and raise. So on those two issues, I would advise young Asian Americans who are interested, again, in running for political office. And so as of now, I think the most important thing about this current tension in this relationship, because of my domestic focus, is that I think it does give rise to anti-Asian harassment and hate crimes, and that concerns me greatly, and I have spoken out against it. And then secondly, I hope that it will not have a chilling effect on the activities of Asian Americans in America. But the good news is our numbers are increasing. We are now about 6% of the overall population, and our country is getting so much more diverse. We're now part of a worldwide economy, and we Asian Americans, in teaching, sharing our experiences with mainstream America, are actually helping to make America a more competitive nation overseas as well.
Actually, on that point, do you mind elaborating a little bit more? What do you think part of the Asian culture can help America be more competitive?
Well, I think for Americans to even understand what Asia is like, humility is a number one virtue in Asian culture. The concept of filial piety, that is to show respect for your parents. Every Asian American person that I speak with understands the concept of filial piety deep in their heart instinctively. And whenever I talk to Asian American young people or older people, they will invariably bring up their parents, the role of their parents in their success or the contributions and sacrifices that their parents have made for their children. Every single Asian American person understands this and will always mention their parents. This is not necessarily so when talking to Westerners. Western concept and Western culture, has fostered a independent characteristic. After all, America was settled by young people who left their families and took very difficult and dangerous paths to establish new territories, new homesteads for themselves. And that's how America expanded and was established. So there's a very different concept. And also, I think we Asian Americans tend to listen more because our culture focuses more on listening. So in America, it's almost like it's 90% output, 10% input, whereas Asian culture is 90% input, 10% output. So this does sometimes make Asian Americans think whether we should be speaking up more. We definitely should, number one, but also we should not forsake our Asian values, especially as we celebrate Asian Pacific American Month or AAPI, Heritage Month. We should feel very confident that we have so much to share with mainstream America. We are the beneficiaries of two wonderful cultures, and we can help mainstream America understand Asian culture, Chinese culture, so that from a geopolitical point of view, there can be greater harmony and peace. And from an economic point of view, we can teach and share our cultural understandings with mainstream Americans who are perhaps thinking about doing business in Asia. So these are wonderful things that we can share with mainstream America, which now is so much more open to greater diversity of people, and different cultures and different languages. And I'll give you another example. It used to be that if you came to America and spoke in a different language, you were a little bit hesitant. For example, for myself, we didn't speak Chinese very much outside the home. And we were so concerned about just learning English that we actually almost forgot our Chinese. But the other thing also is my father has a very, very heavy accent. And he faced a great deal of challenges and difficulties because of that accent. But he is so optimistic and such a can-do person. Instead of feeling, discouraged, he said, because I speak with a heavy accent, other people have to listen more carefully. So it gives me an opportunity to have their full attention. So this is a wonderful example of how always optimistic he and my mother are. So for those who speak with an accent, who speak English with an accent, don't worry so much about that. Our country is increasingly diverse, increasingly open, more so than ever before, to newcomers and to people who are different.
You're absolutely right. This is a very generous country. And what you have described in terms of the Asian characteristics, including something that about your father, I think you admire so much. In your last TVBS interview, you talked about Dr. Zhao's perseverance, tenacity, and stamina in adversity, and how much that has kept you going at times when it's really hard. And today, unfortunately, it feels that American upward mobility seems out of reach for many people. Inequality and inequity are increasing between the haves and the have-nots. The zip code, oftentimes people would say one was born in, very much determines his or her future. So as someone who used to lead the largest charity, United Way, and Peace Corps, you must have thought a lot about those very hard questions. Is American dream still alive?
Absolutely. And I disagree with your characterization. That's a very pessimistic and also politically biased analysis of America. You know, the great thing about America is that we are not afraid to criticize ourselves. In fact, we are very often very harsh upon ourselves. But that's how America improves. That's how it gets better. So that this propensity to criticize ourselves, or to be critical of ourselves, is actually a very good part of America. But having said that, it is not true that America no longer has opportunities. And I hope that people who listen to this will have that belief, because the outside world is tough. There is discrimination. It is hard to advance and to climb to the top if that is your goal. So if you thought that the chances are not there for you to climb upward, to ascend, then you do a double injury to yourself. So let's address the issues one by one. In terms of the issue about income inequality, the income inequality comes, and as a former Secretary of Labor, I have studied this. It comes from the gap in the skills level. Our economy is increasingly an information-based economy. So that means that workers with higher education and with greater skills, higher skills, are more in demand. So their wages will be bid up higher than those who do not have as high an education or not as highly educated. Number two, the jobs are different. Some jobs will pay more than others. If you work in a hard physical job, physically demanding job, that is going to pay more than a cushy office job. Some jobs will require higher education. They will pay more. So the Bureau of Labor Statistics puts out something, it's called, it's a study that compares the amount of education that a person receives, their lifelong earning potential, and the unemployment rate. And what is consistent year after year is that the higher educated people will have less unemployment and they will have higher earnings. So that's why I always encourage young people. And I don't need to encourage Chinese Americans because education is such an integral part of our culture. But to many others, in here in America, I urge teachers, parents, and young people to tell their young people, their friends, that it's really important to get an education because America is known for its ingenuity, its creativity, its innovation, and all of that is based on an information society, an information economy. And then there are also differences in wages depending on how long you stay in the workforce, what studies you pursue. So if you're going to be an engineer, you will earn more than if you're an art major. I'm sorry, art majors, but that's just the truth. And so I don't think many Westerners think about the type of education that they pursue, but I still remember talking to some Chinese American librarians at the Library of Congress. They're archivists. They're not called our librarians. They're archivists, and it's very special. And they basically said that they chose to become archivists or librarians when they first started because there was a dearth of this type of skilled workers in the American society, in the American economy. And thus they were able to get visas quicker to come to America. These kinds of stories in which people choose their occupation because of the probability of getting a visa into a country is only something that an immigrant understands. Most people here in America, they choose a study based on what they like. So, we are very fortunate that we live in a country where people can pursue their dreams, their desires, their passions, but also understand in a market economy, there are still differences in how jobs are paid, depending on the occupation, the length of time that the person is in that occupation, the experience level helps, and of course, educational levels as well. So those are just a few factors that go into, determining the wage levels. But I am a firm believer that opportunities still abound in America for those who dare to dream, who work hard, and who never give up.
Thank you for highlighting that, especially the emphasis of education and practicality, probably sort of the key, again, traits of Asians and Asian Americans that perhaps can help America be more competitive. We only have time for one question submitted online, and this one is from Mindy Du Minzhen. She's currently a graduate student at the National Chengchi University. Secretary Zhao, what was the greatest challenge you've overcome throughout your career? And what was your mindset that guided you through that difficulty?
There are so many challenges. I can't remember them all. If you're the secretary, nothing comes to you unless it's really difficult, that nobody else can solve. And so it comes to your level. So in all of my jobs in leadership positions, none of the problems have been easy. But as evidenced by the fact that I can't remember very many of them, I've overcome them. And so I encourage and I advocate for those who have difficulties in their lives, as we all do, to not lose hope, to always be grateful for whatever you have. I think it's very important to live life with a grateful heart. My father is 96 years old. He is frail, but he is so strong in his positive thinking, in his inspiring words, and he wakes up every morning full of good cheer and with a grateful heart. And it's just a delight to be around someone like that. So this young woman who asked the question, I think if you go to this university, you have such potential and such opportunities facing you in the years ahead. I wish you much luck. You're going to have a very exciting life, and I can't wait to see how life will unfold for you and your generation.
Well, thank you so much, Secretary Zhao. Any last word you'd like to say to our audience who are Asian Americans here in the United States and those from Taiwan and other parts of the world?
I hope you will give your parents my very best regards. And I hope that you will listen to them, pay them respect, and always treasure them. They will not be with you forever.
Well, thank you. 今天再次感谢赵部长在百忙之中抽空来与 TVBS 的观众分享他宝贵的从政经验，以及身为亚裔领袖对当今美国政治社会的想法。Thank you, Secretary Zhao. Take care.
谢谢。Thank you. Bye bye.
谢谢，拜拜。